There's a lot of power built into the JavaScript language, and there's a lot to learn. In fact, when you finish this course, you'll have learned quite a bit about JavaScript, but you'll still have questions. Every developer needs to learn how to learn more about their programming language, where to find answers, and how to read documentation so they can get their work done. In this video, we'll look at one of the best resources for JavaScript programmers, the Mozilla Developer Network. We'll use the Mozilla Developer Network, or MDN for short, to learn how JavaScript strings work and what we can do with them. In JavaScript, strings are not only a type of data, they're also objects that have properties. For example, you can find the length of a string by looking at the string's length property. Say I had a variable named passphrase and I stored a string value in it. I could find out how many characters are in that string by looking at the length property like this. Let's print that out to the console using console.log. I'm going to save the file and then preview my workspace. I'll open up the console. The number is 11. That's the number of characters, including the space between open and sesame, that are in the string. I'll change this variable to the word hi and see what happens. Now the number's 2. The length property is useful. You could use it to make sure that a user set up a password that's at least 10 characters long, but no longer than 20, for example. But what's this dot between the variable name and the length keyword? The variable and the string value inside it are called an object. And different types of objects have different properties. We'll talk more about objects throughout this course, but for now, just understand that you can access a property of an object using this dot. A property is kind of like a variable. It holds information. A string's length property, for example, contains a number, the number of characters in the string. You can use the length property on any string, even a literal collection of characters inside quotes like this. Because the string has 38 characters inside it, its length property is 38. Remove one letter and its length value will change to 37. Just like a variable, a property is dynamic and can change. How can you find out more about how strings work? One of the best sources of JavaScript information can be found at the Mozilla Developer Network. In particular, the JavaScript reference section of the site offers in-depth information on every aspect of the JavaScript language. I can scroll down the page and find a link to the string object. Notice on the left there's a list of properties and a list of methods. A method is basically something you can do with the object. It's an action. As you can see, there are lots of different methods available here, but just 2 that I want to talk about in this video. First, I'll click on this string.prototype.toLowercase. Yikes! The title sounds a bit scary, and unfortunately, the Mozilla Developer Network sometimes uses accurate but overly complicated language to explain JavaScript. The string.prototype here just refers to a string, either like a set of characters between quotes or a string value you've placed in a variable. Let me just scribble that part out. There we go, that's better. The important bit is just the toLowercase part. The parentheses at the end tell you that this is a method, like a command you can perform on a string. Guess what this one does? It takes a string and converts it to all lowercase letters. This page even provides an example of how this method works and what value it returns. Let's try it out. Notice that I typed the name of the variable. Remember, it holds a string value. Then a dot, and then the method name, just like when I added a dot to access the length property. The main difference is that there are now a pair of parentheses. The parentheses are what indicate that this is a command or a method of the string. We've actually seen other methods. Remember console.log and document.write? Log is a method or command for the console, and write is a method of the document. Let's log out the value. I'm going to save this and preview my workspace. All the letters are lowercase now, including the O and S. The toLowercase method doesn't actually change the original string, or change the variable that's holding the string value. It just provides or returns a new string that's all lowercase. We can prove this by seeing what's inside the passphrase variable after the method runs. See, the variable passphrase isn't changed. Remember I talked about returning values before? The prompt command, for example, returns whatever a visitor types into the prompt dialog box. The toLowercase method also returns a value. Let's look at another string method. The toUppercase method does the opposite of the toLowercase method. It returns a string that's all uppercase letters. Let's see how it works. All right, let's take this newfound power for a ride and create our first web app. It's called Shout App, and here's how it works. When the page loads, a prompt appears. The user types in something to shout. We'll convert their response to all caps, add an exclamation mark, and send the message back to them. I'll start by erasing all this other code. We don't need it for our Shout App. First, let's create a variable and capture the user's response to a prompt dialog. Then, I'll create another variable to hold the return value of the toUppercase method. We need to add an exclamation to the end. How about a few? And then send the shout back. Let's see how this works. Save the file and preview the workspace. Now you know a bit more about strings. You've also learned some important JavaScript concepts. When we program with JavaScript, we often work with objects, such as a string, the document, and the browser's console. Objects have properties, which are kind of like variables for an object. They hold information about the object, like the length of a string. Objects also have methods, which are actions the object can perform, like the toUppercase method for a string, or the .write method for the document. Most importantly, you're starting to use resources like the Mozilla Developer Network, so you can explore the JavaScript language on your own.